Over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack one of the biggest challenges any modern business is facing. How do you use data powerfully without totally breaking your customers' trust? We'll dig into the critical link between data, ethics, and yeah, your bottom line. From the second you wake up, you're creating data. Just think about it for a sec. Your coffee order, the articles you decide to share online, even the show you just binged last night. Every single action is like a digital breadcrumb, and when you put them all together, they tell a surprisingly detailed story about who you are. And here's the thing, businesses now have this incredible power to read that story. They use all this data to try and predict the future, to shape their entire strategies. But with that kind of power comes a huge responsibility. So let's see what that really means in practice. So, we have all this data, which is an absolutely huge opportunity for innovation. But it also creates a pretty big problem. How do we handle all this power responsibly? To make this feel real, let's meet a few people who are wrestling with this exact question. To really get our heads around this, let's follow three friends. We've got Sarah, who works in a hospital, Raj, who runs a logistics company, and Elena, who's a retail manager. Each one of them is trying to use data to solve real-world problems. And their challenges really bring us to the core question of this whole explainer. As we get better and better at using data, how do we make sure we're actually doing it ethically? This is where the principles of data ethics come into play. All right, let's start with the first big pillar, privacy. We'll see how this applies directly to Elena's retail business. At its heart, data ethics is really about creating a code of conduct. It's about setting the rules of the road for how we handle information, to protect people's rights and, just as importantly, to build and maintain trust. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Check out the disconnect here. Elena's retail store collects a ton of data, browsing history, what people buy, even their location, all to make the shopping experience better. But her customers, a lot of them think she only knows what they bought at the register. And that gap, that is a huge potential source of mistrust. So the key takeaway here is simple. Earning customer trust begins with respecting their privacy. That means being totally transparent about what you're collecting and why you're collecting it. Okay, so beyond privacy, the second pillar of data ethics is fairness. And this is where things can get really complicated really fast. Powerful tools like machine learning are pretty much commonplace now. Sarah's hospital might use them to predict patient outcomes, and Raj's company uses them to optimize all their delivery routes. These algorithms learn from the data of the past to make decisions about the future. And this is the critical question. What if that historical data reflects all our old societal biases in hiring or in lending or even in medical diagnoses? Well, an algorithm trained on that data won't just repeat those biases. It can actually amplify them, making unfair systems even more locked in. So the main takeaway here is that we can't just blindly trust our data. It's our job to actually look at our algorithms and correct for these historical biases, making sure our decisions are not just data-driven, but that they're also fair. And this brings us right to our final pillar, transparency. I mean, think about it. If people can't understand how a decision was made, why should they ever trust it? When data analysis is a black box, just filled with these complex formulas that nobody can really interpret, it just creates suspicion and it kills trust. For Raj's clients to trust his delivery estimates, they need to understand, at least at a high level, how he got them. And this slide just illustrates the solution so brilliantly. Instead of showing all the complicated math, we can use clear data visualization and storytelling. A simple bar chart can get a powerful insight across way more effectively than a complex equation ever could. Ultimately, transparency isn't about sharing every single data point. It's about being able to clearly explain the story behind the data and the logic that led you to your conclusions. So, how do these three pillars, privacy, fairness, and transparency, all come together? Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture of why this all matters so much. At the end of the day, practicing good data ethics isn't just about avoiding fines or following some regulations. It's a core business strategy. Trust is basically the currency of the digital age, and you build it on a foundation of handling data ethically. Here's a simple framework you can use. First, protect privacy like it's your most valuable asset. Second, actively ensure fairness by hunting for and correcting bias in your systems. And finally, demand transparency from yourself and your teams by telling clear, understandable stories with your data. And I'll leave you with this final thought. The power of data analytics to give us answers is growing every single day, but our most important job is to get better at asking the right questions. Not just what can we do with this data, but should we?